A food pantry in Ward County is doing its part to make sure families in the area have food on their tables. Ladora Schischler, director of Berthold Zion Food Pantry, says in November they gave about 2,000 pounds of food for around 20 families. She says they have clients that come from outside of Berthold, from cities like Minot, Stanley, and Carpio. She says there's no financial requirement and they're open to anyone in need.
Well, I've held people while they cried because they never thought they'd have to be here. So it's pretty awesome.
Now, they too are participating in the Inspiritus Twice Blessed campaign. The pantry is open the second Tuesday of every month from 10 a.m. to noon and 5 to 7 p.m.